witty, funny, self-reliant, smart.
Today, Colleen Moore is best known for her fairy castle on permanent exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, Illinois. Tragically, very few people know of her influence. Colleen Moore is a triumph because in both her on-screen roles and off-screen lifestyle, she projected an independent female figure who helped shape America's views on women. During the early 20th century, many people began to migrate to major cities, where better jobs, new products, and the fast life of the Roaring Twenties appealed to them. Between 1860 and 1920, the number of people living in American cities increased from 6.2 million to 54.3 million. This was the first time the populations of cities surpassed that in rural areas. There was also a cultural shift happening, largely because of the new technologies such as automobiles, bicycles, telephones, and electrical household appliances. Because of these advances, young women were now able to have more freedom from their families. They could call their sweethearts on the telephone, and they rode in automobiles to explore beyond their previous boundaries. Conservative society feared that the new social and sexual boundaries that the young women of the 1920s were pushing went too far. The older generation were shocked by the younger generation's seemingly scandalous behavior. The entire flapper culture contributed to these social changes, as many young women embraced some aspect of the flapper life, whether it be clothing, cosmetics, habits, activities, or ideas. As a bridge between the voguish girl and the Victorian generation, Colleen Moore played an important role in helping to change the accepted norms for women. But she did not do it alone. Even before her, the path for women to become more independent and free-thinking started in 1919, when suffragettes and women all over the country won the right to vote. When Colleen Moore was young, she kept a scrapbook of her favorite actors, but one page was blank. This page was reserved for a very special person, the woman she would grow up to become, the woman who would forever spark change in the way that America viewed its women.
Kathleen Morrison was born in 1899 in Port Huron, Michigan, and as a child she would often spend time in Chicago visiting her relatives. She would later return to the city as an adult.
Kathleen's start to fame began with her uncle Walter Howie.
My uncle was a rather famous newspaper man in Chicago, and Mr. Griffith was having a terrible time getting The Birth of a Nation and Intolerance past the censors. And my uncle evidently had a lot of political clout because he arranged it. And after the pictures were shown and everything was arranged, Mr. Griffith said to my uncle, "What can I do to repay you?" And poor Mr. Griffith heard my uncle say, "I have a niece."
She needed a stage name, so she was christened Colleen Moore, and from then on, a star was born. Despite working for several studios that were forced to close down and becoming unemployed frequently, Moore was still able to make a name for herself by 1919. Over the next few years, she would continue to increase her star power by acting in many silent films. In May of 1923, Colleen signed a contract with American First National Pictures and started work on Flaming Youth, which was released in November of that year. In prior films, she had mostly played the love interest or heroine to the lead male character. However, in this film, she played a flapper who was a spirited and independent young woman. She was pleased with every scene and felt that it more truly showed off herself as a person. As she said in her biography, "Don't worry, girls, no edict of fashion arbiters will ever swathe you in long and cumbersome skirts." She added, "The American girl will see to this. She is independent, a thinker, who will not follow slavishly the ordinances of those who in the past have decreed this or that for her to wear." In the role Moore played in the movie Flaming Youth, she becomes the physical embodiment of the flapper look. Colleen Moore's mother decided that Moore did not entirely fill the role of the character she would be playing, so she cut off Colleen's long Victorian curls into a bob, a better suit for her flapper role. Moore popularized the bob, and it became the archetypal flapper hairstyle. Moore's above-the-knee skirts were also viewed as both shocking and comedic. Photoplay magazine rained praise on her, declaring, "She looks the part with her straight bobbed hair and her mischief-filled eyes."
In 1924, she was also described by Jack Youngmeyer, a writer for the Port Huron Times-Herald, as the very apotheosis of the cult of unhampered youthful self-expression.
The flapper craze was taking over America. Young women from all different ethnicities and backgrounds donned the flapper look and worshipped their idols. It was a new way of life for the young women, a new way for them to express themselves. As they became more independent, they created change. As Joshua Zeitz says in his book Flapper, a madcap story of sex, style, celebrity, and the women who made America modern.
Millions of flappers embraced a controversial lifestyle in a spirited attempt at self-definition. They did so in concert, buying the same brands of clothing, makeup, and cigarettes, emulating Clara Bow and Colleen Moore, and adopting the same jargon ripped from the pages of Scott Fitzgerald's latest short story.
When asked about her role in Flaming Youth and how it changed how she was viewed, Colleen Moore's reply was, "They copied my clothes. No longer did a girl have to be beautiful to be sought after. Any plain Jane could become a flapper. No wonder they grabbed me to their hearts and made me their movie idol. As F. Scott Fitzgerald once put it, I was the spark that lit up flaming youth. Colleen Moore was the torch. Colleen was not afraid to express herself, but she also wanted to conduct herself properly. Although she had the outward physical appearance and style of a flapper, she lived wholesomely and honestly instead of choosing the fast life of a traditional flapper, which was irresponsible and promiscuous.
Colleen could not be sexy. Colleen is the girl next door. Colleen is the flirtatious, wonderful little kid.
For this reason, both old and young audiences could connect with her. One of the things that Colleen Moore is most recognized for is her famous fairy castle, which she began building in 1928. When it was finished in 1935, she set out on a national tour to help raise money for children's charities.
This is the Enchanted Castle. It is now starting on a tour of the world for the benefit of crippled children. Now, if you listen carefully, you can hear the magic nightingale singing in the Garden of Aladdin.
The Museum of Science and Industry reports the dollhouse made over $650,000, which in today's money would be roughly $8.7 million. After she retired from acting, Colleen continued to contribute to her community in Chicago. In addition to the Fairy Castle tour, Moore was on the board for the Chicago Art Institute, the Museum of Science and Industry, and the Women's Board of Passavant Hospital, which is known today as the Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The LA Times states that at the very peak of her career, she was the first star to earn a salary of $10,000 or more a week, which is equivalent to $127,000 a week in today's money.
As an actress, was like the number one gate receipt actress of her time, which was, by today's standards, is phenomenal. And rather than what you hear about pro basketball players today, where they make scads of money and then file for bankruptcy, she invested it all in the stock market.
Investing money in the stock market was not common for a woman at the time. Moore wanted to learn about economics and money management. Her husband, Homer Hargrave, happened to be a stockbroker, so she went to him for advice. After becoming financially independent and knowledgeable, she wrote How Women Can Make Money in the Stock Market, excerpts of which were published in the Chicago Tribune. She also claimed to be an early partner of Merrill Lynch, an investment management company. Her intention in writing the book was to influence women to invest and view the stock market differently, and that they can be just as successful as men.
I think she just felt that a woman has as much right as a man to do what she wants to do, and she did.
One of the projects that Colleen Moore worked on during the 1960s was the Chicago International Film Festival. Michael Kutza, who was working to create the film festival, met Moore through a mutual friend. Colleen gave Kutza advice and connected him to important people due to her influence and celebrity status. Kutza remembers her as
Very funny, bright, energetic person. And she kept the same haircut that she made famous in the movies. Colleen Moore basically was Charlie Chaplin, except she was a woman.
Although many facets of Colleen's life were successes in the progression of women's social freedoms, it is a tragedy that her impact is barely recognized today. Her films, which were entrusted to the possession of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, were ill cared for and exposed to destructive materials, which left them irreparably and forever destroyed. Other famous silent film actors, such as Charlie Chaplin, were able to save their films. Their works are still intact for many generations to enjoy, making their names and films better known today.
Mostly it was her obsession to try to find the missing films.
Yeah.
Because they're all gone.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody saved anything, and the nitrate or whatever they were on, all disintegrated. Nobody cared. And her best friend, I guess lover back then, was King Vidor, a famous Hollywood director. They had an on and off relationship, and he saved his films. So I would learn about Charlie Chaplin saved his films, King saved his films. Nobody else saved anything. They had nothing.
Right.
So her obsession was, I've got to find some of my films.
During Colleen Moore's lifetime, she was able to inspire women, both on and off screen. She portrayed an independent, successful woman, influencing millions to become the modern American girl. Colleen Moore's importance has been all but forgotten, which is a true tragedy. Nevertheless, Moore's impact is a triumph for Illinois, America, and for women's history.